Okay, folks, it's showtime. So, delighted to see a nice group here for the launch of Steve Pyke's Scribendi. Yes, there's a word. You can explain that in
prompt.
You can explain that in depth. Delighted to see you here this evening. Today is such a horrible day. God, I got wet so many times. I was up the street and this guy said to me, he said, "Sure, underneath we're waterproof. What's the problem?" There's an approach. But we're delighted to be hosting this event here this evening. We're familiar with Steve's work from this incredible book that was published in the 90s. I Could Read the Sky, text by Timothy O'Grady, and photographs by Steve Pyke. And it's about the Irish immigration experience, and such a fantastic melding of text and image. One would be nothing without the other, really. It was a beautiful piece of work. But all of that time, Steve was taking photographs of Irish writers from 1985 until 2025, and it'll continue, I presume.
It will.
Yeah, there is no there's no end to this work.
No end to writers.
And there's loads of writers, that's right. So we are delighted to have with us this evening Lisa McInerney and Louis de Paor, who need no introduction to this audience here this evening. They feature in the book. So Steve is going to talk a little bit about how he became a photographer and his early life. And then there will be a conversation between Steve, Louis and Lisa. And it's all loose. So let's see what happens. So I'm going to hand you over to Steve Pyke.
Thanks, Andy. Well, I like loose, so that'll suit me. So I'm Steve. Thanks for coming, everybody, and on this cold, wet night. And I'll speak a little bit about where I'm from and how I became a photographer, because I kind of came into it kind of obliquely, because I was born in Leicester in the Midlands, in the East Midlands, and I always sort of so we'll start here, because it's kind of like where I didn't ever really kind of fit, and I felt that I fitted there, and reading was a massive part of my I kind of read to escape, and it was a massive part of my life growing up as a kid. I just didn't, I was the one that was on the grass, the dreamer, looking at the sky. This is what my mum still says, and I used to read a lot. I used to read a lot of science fiction, I remember. And I had a great English teacher. I was talking to somebody today. It was such a blessing to get somebody that encouraged a child, who was kind of a bit lost, to read. And through reading, I really escaped. But he was really into. I remember reading Treasure Island, and I remember reading, and I got really into John Wyndham. I remember that. I wasn't going to talk to you about this, but now I am. But he did what Eddie Gray, who's the teacher, who's at our school. He encouraged us to. The readers, the people that we were reading, the writers we were reading, were like Bill Norton, Stan Barstow, all of this school that came from the early 1960s. Alan Sillitoe. Remember reading Loneliness, the Long Distance Runner, and these were like incredible books, because they were really books that reflected my life, really, and the older people that I knew, people that were, because it was a factory town, Leicester, and I kind of sort of felt like my life, in lots of ways, was kind of figured out for me. I failed 11 plus, and they had an 11 plus in those days, and I went to secondary modern, and they said, well, you've got to. I remember going for careers guidance, and it was in this prefab, and this guy never stopped eating polo mints. I can remember that. And he said, well, you can work at Cora's. Cora's was the place, the Boot and Shoe place. Actually, it wasn't Boot and Shoe. It was Boot and Shoe in Leicester, and there was Fabrics, and it was Fabrics. And you can either work in the factory floor if you don't get enough exams, or if you get enough exams, you can work in the office. But there wasn't really any alternative to working at Cora's, you know. So a lot of these books that I was reading for CSEs were books about the experience of being Saturday night, Sunday morning. All of this was the experiences. So it was something that I really related to. It was a big part of my life. And then I went to America on a visit, and then I was in bands. I came back, and the whole punk thing had happened, and that was such a massive thing for me, you know, creatively, because it meant that I was able to, I guess what it did was it just enabled me to realise that I was capable of doing much more than what I was being told that I was going to be able to do, you know, which was just working in the factory floor. So I became a singer, and then after about 3 years, this is really forcing it down, after 3 years of being in a band, and I'll skip that, I decided that I didn't want to be in a band anymore, and I came over to Dublin with my wife at the time, and parents-in-law. We went to Funderland at the RDS. Everything's got a place in this story, and somebody had given me a camera, and I started to photograph, and I photographed in Funderland was a mad kind of fair, wall of death, this gravitational pull that people would fall against wood and be whirled round at 50 miles, 60 miles an hour, and dodgems and ghost trains and all that. So I photographed where life was kind of out of control, which again kind of ate where my life was at that particular point. And the magic, the alchemy of photography, which is to have a roll of film, it's inside this little capsule, and then it's in your pocket for like 3 weeks, and then it's not supposed to be in your pocket for 3 weeks, but it's in my pocket for 3 weeks, and then you go to the darkroom and you develop it, and then it's just like a negative of what it just seemed like magic and alchemy to me, and I got it straight away. It was really just like a revelation to me, and I started to photograph, and that was almost 50 years ago, like 46 years ago now. I can't believe it, but it was, and it led me to this life of being able to photograph all sorts of people, like amazing people, because I'm, you know, still this boy from Leicester, you know, and yet I got to do and meet all these amazing people on the way. Some of these people were writers, Irish writers, English writers, American, South American writers. I've photographed many in the past 45 years. And so during COVID, somebody said to me the other day in London that everyone's got this COVID story, that something positive came out of it. And during COVID, for me, what I did was I put, because I was kind of, we were forced to be on our own, and I was in my studio, and so I started to put what I needed to be done, which was to put my archive in order. And there are all sorts of areas: film directors, writers, philosophers, men that had walked on the moon, war veterans, all sorts of different areas of photography. So I looked at the writers and I realised that I'd photographed 30, 40 Irish writers. And skipped to about 2 years later, and I was in Connemara in this amazing place called Devil's Mother in the Partry Mountains. Is that right, Joe?
Yeah, just near Linan.
Yeah, near Linan, yeah, between Linan and Westport. And it's just an amazing place. It's kind of this, just like, where it's just so, it was such, such a haven to be there. I was there with my wife, and I picked up this book, which was, there were many, many books there, and I picked up this book, Multitudes by Lucy Caldwell. And I was just like, I just read it through, a book of short stories, and just like read it through. It was like, and I started to think about halfway through, well, I should finish this. I should go, because I'm, at that place in my life where I'm thinking about finishing things, bringing things to fruition. And I thought, well, I'll bring this collection to fruition. I should tell you, this was 15 months ago. So 15 months ago, I'd photographed 30 odd Irish writers. And so I decided I talked to Nick, and I decided I was going to go and photograph more Irish writers, and in the way that is compulsive disorder that I have in my life, you know, I'm just like completely compulsive about something. It went from the idea of photographing maybe 15 or 20 people, and it went, and suddenly it's 106. And so in the last, really only in the last 9 months, I guess, and I do live in New Orleans, I don't live in Ireland, you know, I had to come over and do this. I think we've had 5 trips here, and I've had incredible help, all the writers. I mean, I've read everybody, I've been kind of reading all the writers, make sure I've read everything the writers have done before I met them, and I've had this amazing help from Joe there, who's like, you know, who like without his help I wouldn't have been able to organise anything or get from A to B even, or be fed. Is that right, Joe? I think it kind of is. And so you know, it came to like how I was going to do this, and I decided that what I wanted to do was put a discipline onto it. So I photograph with an so I just explained the process. I photograph with it's a shame I haven't got the camera with me, because it's kind of like the camera needs to be photographed, you know. It's like this 1957, which is a really good year because it's the year I was born as well, and that's what the guy that sold it to me in 1980 told me. And he didn't say what year were you born. I said 1957. Oh, this camera was made in 1957, but it really was. And it's an old twin lens Rolleiflex, which is like, you flick it out, you look down into it like this, so you kind of photographing. But it's an interesting way of photographing people, because it's not like this, you know, which is in some ways when you photograph, like, you know, if you photograph like this to somebody, it's well, this way's submissive, you know, it's passive, and it's allowing someone to come into the camera, I feel, in a different way, and this is more aggressive. And I do photograph with a Leica as well, just a few frames. So what I decided to do is shoot one roll of black and white film, which is only 12 frames. And you know, we live in this age of more and more and more all the time, you know, it seems to me, and digital, where anyone can shoot so many different pictures and then have to edit them. So I chose to shoot just 12 frames, and 12 frames for me on a sheet, they're square. Everything to me is kind of square. Like, I think it's kind of like something, it goes back to my visual education, which is the TV. TVs used to be square, you know, and I think that's where it came from, that I see things in that way, that they're framed in squares. So 12 frames of black and white and 6 frames of colour. So I limited it because I wanted to have that discipline. And then to make it kind of risky, what I did was I asked friends who's got any of this dead stock. I call it dead stock. It's not. There's no such thing as dead stock. It's just like, it's a really nice title, and and dead stock is, as you'd imagine, is out of date film. So a lot of the film that I was photographing this book with, Scribendi, was film that had been, you know, out of date by as much as 20 years. In fact, you know, I think the pictures that I photographed you with, Jane, you know, were like that's over 20. That was over 20 years old. So let me show you an example. It'll fall open. Now. This is a good example. So this one here is like, it's kind of, you never knew what you were going to get with the out of date stock. It could fog. It give you this. All of these side pages are from the outside, from part of the leads on the film. I'm going to find a really good one here. So it's really clear. Now I can't find any, of course. Here's one. This is one of Martina Evans. So this is black and white, but you can see there's almost like a miasma around her. It's kind of so this is really out of date black and white film. So I kind of made myself all these problems. It's almost like it's created a ghost around her.
It's like a painting.
Yeah. I'm not in control of any of that, of course, and I just wanted to add that element into it, that element of risk. So so I photographed in that way, very minimally. What I do normally is I ask somebody for an hour, and then, which she's just about to get, I think, and we talk for like about 40 minutes, something like that, and then I say I'm going to make a portrait now, and that usually takes 5 or 10 minutes. It's quite short, and that's it. I mean, it's quite simple the way that I work. Usually it's natural light, and then I asked these questions. I asked because I figured like a book of photographs on its own is it's not that interesting. Well, it's not interesting for me, and kind of the most interesting thing for me about the photography is meeting people. But I thought that it would be interesting to have input from the writers. I mean, it's a written word. So I asked about these questions are about, I feel like after you've had a life in writing, you should be able to answer them in a way. It's like, when were you aware that writing was something for you? When were you first able to believe in something you'd written? So that's the second question. And the third was, where do you hope the work will lead? Which is kind of open-ended, and it could be, where do you hope it leads for yourself, or where do you hope it leads for your audience? And then to have a piece of text that in some way complements the picture or would sit with the picture. So that's really the premise of the book. That's how I wanted to do it, and it happened. Was it 9 months later? I'd photographed 70 people. So I wanted to ask. I'll ask you, Lisa. What was it like being photographed? Because I never get to ask that. I never get to ask that because I'm always going out the door to photograph the next person. But I'm kind of interested, what it was like to be photographed.
See, you can probably hear me anyway. Do you know what? It's really interesting because as a writer, you tend to get you get photographed a bit throughout your career. Every time a book comes out, you get photographed. You get photographed at festivals. It happens quite a lot, and there's a lot of different experiences you have being photographed. So something like this was very different and very special because a lot of the time it's commercial, and you've got a photographer who's probably got a bunch of other things to do. He has a very specific image in his mind, and you get a lot of, and it's really interesting too, I think, as a woman, you get a lot of smile. I'm kind of a bit strange in that I don't like smiling in photographs, but I never stop smiling when I'm not photographed. And people get the wrong impression that I'm very jolly, and I'm not jolly at all. I'm just, it's kind of a rigid, weird, anxious thing. But so I get a lot of photographers going once I start posing, and that word posing is interesting too, we can talk about that. Once I start posing, saying well, come on, give us a smile, do the thing. You didn't do that. It was none of that. It was conversation, snap, conversation. And I remember, because we did it over at the university, and I know you like to do it at people's homes. So we were in my office at the university, which is not the most welcoming space at all.
No. It's an office.
It's an office, and it's got 2 walls of windows.
Good light.
So the light, well, it could be good and it could be not so good, depending. And this had been sprung on me at the last minute. I think maybe this is a tactic you have.
We didn't know. Because I should just say that every time I ask a writer, every time I photograph a writer, I'd ask them if they could give me 10 names that they felt should be in this book. And when a name came up 3 times, so I've got this amazing list of contemporary Irish writers and the 10 names that they feel should be in the book. And whenever a name came up 3 times, and Lisa's had come up many times, but I didn't realise she was in the next room to Ellen, who I was photographing at the time. So that's how we got to meet each other. We didn't realise when we woke up in the morning and we brushed our teeth, we didn't know we were going to meet each other.
At least I did brush my teeth. And at least I did brush my hair. But other than that, I was in a big woolly jumper, and it was just not at all. But I think, but it's interesting because that's probably where you get the true portrait then, don't you? When somebody isn't aware of what's about to happen, or hasn't had time to put on the face that they want to have, or the outfit that they want to have. It's not how they are want to be perceived. It's how they actually are. I don't know. Does that?
I think sometimes it's like that. It works. When somebody asked me the other night, when is a portrait successful? And it's a portrait's kind of like successful. It's when it's a continuation of a conversation. I think that the conversation you have is really, really, really important, and the meeting of the person is, like, in some ways for me, the most important. And the portrait is kind of like a proof in some way that I've been there, you know, and it's the reason I get into the reason I originally, you know, that I get to be in that room. But the conversation in the meeting and all the meetings with these extraordinary people that I carry in my head, you know, in my heart as well, you know, it's like why I'm there. So a portrait that works is like antithesis of the conversation and the time of being with you as well, and the reaction between two people. That's it. So it means I don't make people smile, I suppose.
Well, yeah. It was just we were just chatting, and you were talking about extraordinary people. As you were leaving the office, I remember this. I have a greeting card that my son got me on my shelf in my office, and it's got a picture of the actor Steve Buscemi on it, and it's a drawing of him. And you turned around and you said, "Oh, that's that Steve Buscemi?" I said, "Yes, it is." And you went, "Oh, I've been for drinks with him." And I was like,
"Yeah, but I never photographed him, right?"
And what a face!
Yeah, he's
what's
great.
a good face to photograph? It doesn't matter.
Well, I could say like an older face, you know, because you grow into. I think you grow into your face and you earn your face, and I think if you think inwardly, you have an inward-looking face, and if you think outwardly, you have an outward-looking face, I believe, you know. And so old faces are amazing to photograph, but I mean, I photographed like my sons and daughters since they were 20 minutes old, and it's like an ongoing series. And so obviously when they're completely like flawless, like kind of like old people.
Yeah.
You know, we go back to it, you know. And so photographing faces that haven't really had a chance to develop are interesting as well. So I photographed a lot of famous people, and it's interesting because people ask that who's the most interesting or who's the most difficult. The people ask that the most difficult, not the easiest. The easiest are the best ones to talk about, right? But sometimes when people walk in and you see them and they're like people that they're like faces that are so familiar, you know, like you're really familiar if you've got your face on a stamp, you know. If you got your face on a stamp, you've kind of made it.
That's one I still have to do.
But not made it, but you're famous everywhere, you know, like the Queen or well, Shane was on a stamp, you know, which was really funny. So that, you know, strange. I'm sure he'd have laughed. So when somebody comes into a room and they're that famous, like they've been on a stamp, you look at them and it's almost like they're part of your family, like you know them. They're that familiar, you know, like Paul McCartney. If Paul McCartney is to walk in this door now, you would know immediately that it was Paul McCartney, and his face would be so familiar. But it's also kind of a jolt, you know, because the only way you've met him before is kind of like here is part of your makeup, you know. So meeting Paul McCartney is kind of cool, interesting.
I'd say so. And like if Paul McCartney walked in and said, "Steve, take my photograph,"
he did.
Would you? Of course he did. Of the many people, you know, the many famous people, us, Paul McCartney,
actually,
you know, on a live.
Yeah.
But do you think is it something that you would try to do to capture something new or something different, something fresh? Is that what you're thinking? For somebody who's that recognisable, where do you come in?
So I don't put that kind of pressure, because I think, you know, if you're nervous or you put pressure like that onto something, then it's kind of false to the situation, and the person that's sitting there will feel it. If you're nervous, if I know that I'm photographing a head of state or Paul, like say Paul McCartney, I did photograph him. Then there's no point in me being like nervous about that, because the chances are that he's nervous about being photographed as well. It's true, you know, everybody's all sitting here, like, you know, you think like, well, to talk to it, that's not what I do, but I can talk to people, but it's if you're in a state of nervousness, then you communicate nervousness, and that's not what you want in a picture. So my way I photograph has always been the same: is to speak to people, and if they get on with me, they gets a type of picture. If they don't get on with me, and it does happen, because not everyone likes everyone, do they? Like, then that creates something as well, you know.
The tension there.
Yeah. I photographed Brian De Palma, who's like, I love some of his movies, and he's like, you know, he's a very difficult person at that particular point, and the picture is full of like angst, and that's because so it shows that's that way of photographing somebody. You're not trying to produce that, but that way, that honesty with people, that will produce like an honest reaction.
You get quite close as well, don't you?
Yeah, and I get to this place like, so the camera is like about this far away, and that's a very interesting place to be, because it's a place that most of the time only people that your loved ones are this close, and so it exposes an area that's either a lot of other people, you know, a lot of people don't get into, and that's what I want to do. I think there's like a level of honesty to it as well. There's no.
Yeah.
I use a background. Excuse me. I use a black background. It's white on one side and black on the other. My grandma made it for me about 35 years ago. She was a seamstress, and I was travelling photographing philosophers, and I was having to take these big white and black rolls of paper for it, and I realised if I came up with a big pillowcase, like a pillowcase this size, black on one side and white on the other, then that would work, and I still use the same. So I like old things. I don't throw them out, you know.
I'm really interested there. You talk about these types of people that you photograph, and I know it's probably quite a silly question, but you'd wonder, is there something that connects writers and then philosophers and then astronauts as a set? Like, is there something that was common to photographing these types of people, or is everybody completely different? Everyone's an individual?
I think everyone's an individual, yeah. And I think that, I mean, the archive that during COVID, the archive I was putting together, I mean, they're connected through the camera that I photograph with, so they are all being photographed by the same person, but everybody's very, very different, and everybody walks into a room with, like, if I just call it baggage, but it doesn't have to be baggage like bad thing, you know, like they've just walked in from making their kids soup, or, you know, or watching a TV program, or could be all sorts of things, and they come in with, because everyone's, you know, they're just as a person, they arrive, and it's so, in some ways, it's no big mystery, it's just, you know, to what I do, I photograph people in particular points of their life, and sometimes I photograph them again, so like Neil Jordan, in that book, in this book, is 1985, is the oldest picture, but I photographed him a number of times since, and it's interesting to go back and re-photograph a face, you know, like I photographed my kids. So what was it like to be photographed?
Well, it was great, obviously. But the whole process was interesting, just as you described it, like how little time you actually spent taking the photos was interesting. But I suppose, I mean, the whole idea of photographs should be about trust, but it's actually about overcoming deep distrust, I think, that everybody is wary of the camera, like, despite all the changes in technology. I was thinking earlier today, I remember when I was a young fella, if you were in bad form, your mother would say to you, you can take that face off you right now for a start. And then I thought, everybody puts on a face for the camera, and you might have 2 or 3 faces that you put on, or one that you feel is okay. And before you came, I knew your work through I Could Read the Sky, but I did look at a lot of the other images, and I thought, this is really interesting. Very, very interesting hearing what you said about older people, because what struck me was that the photographs you took, there was a particular group of photographs of older men who clearly were beyond putting on a brave face, who really, really had got to whatever point in their lives that they clearly didn't appear, at least, to care. And there's a photograph there, there's several photographs you have of Seamus Dean, for instance, and it's just as if, like, it's just him as he is or was. Now there's a couple of photographs there also which give the impression that it's like he's saying, "Go on, I dare you, ask me a question and see where you get with that." So, but I really liked that idea that you could be just very, very relaxed. You came to the office with Joe, and the whole experience was very quick and very, very easy, and it should be very disconcerting when somebody is that close to you, but it wasn't. Like, you moved away. Do you know what I mean? But just so
it's a very personal space.
So I suppose I'd be curious, how do you get to that place with each of the subjects? Like, you'd either already been with Lisa or Elaine when you came to me. You did 3 of us
in one day,
in a very short period of time, and yet you were fully present each time when you came in the door, and you just felt this is going to be grand.
Right. Well,
and Joe also, I suppose, like, there were 3 of us there in a very small space. We talked about everything. It seemed like it only was 20 minutes or there, and then I realised I had a photograph up on my shelf that I'd forgotten you took. One of the 3 generations of women out.
I remember,
and at the end you turned and said,
I could read the sky.
I took that photo.
Yeah. It's funny when you see pictures out of context, like you see something that you photographed, and it's in like there's a record shop round the corner from our house there's a record shop round the corner from our house in New Orleans, and I go buy my vinyl there, and then he started stocking cards, and I'm going past it, flicking through it one day, and there's this picture of 3 generations, and a picture of some kids jumping on a bouncy castle in Brighton in 1985, and they're my pictures, and it's completely out of context with like where I was. Like, I hadn't seen the pictures for years, but they were just like postcards that he was selling. So I think when I come into a room though, that my mind's clear when I first go into a room. I don't have any preconceived idea of what I'm going to do. Like, if you had a preconceived idea of what you were going to have in a conversation, the conversation wouldn't go very far, like. So it seems the same to me. So, and it seems consistent with my idea that a portrait that I want to make anyway, comes from like an open heart, in a way, an open heart, and a clear mind, and hopefully a good conversation.
But to do it in 10 minutes is still remarkable.
But I know what I'm doing.
And
now,
so that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah.
That to get that many different people, contrary people. I mean, myself and Lisa, not contrary, but some of our readers are.
Can be awful, yeah.
But when somebody comes in that close to you, to just feel like this is okay, this is fine, and not being told to smile or anything. But you did say, look that way, look this way, or
direct,
just whatever, and that was it.
Yeah.
But you also felt, I suppose, because I'd seen so many other photographs of yours, I thought, just let it happen. Don't try to do anything.
Yeah.
That's what
I would direct in a picture. I would direct left, right, and this sort of thing. But I wouldn't say, look. So I'd do that, but I wouldn't say be happy, or like I wouldn't say that, like anything emotive, saying emotion. So, and also I know how to make an image now. I should do after like 45 years or so. So I know how to make a picture, and how those pictures, how to make something. And so that's why when I was putting risk into the 12 frames in black and white and the 6 frames in colour, I had no problem, because I knew that I'd get a picture, like I know how to make that happen, probably with a couple of frames.
It's pretty disarming though when you're told use the same camera for Shane McGowan, you know what I mean?
Yeah, or the Dalai Lama.
That gets
like
you
all sorts of people.
Not so much the Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
Shane
I'll
McGowan.
put them in the same book.
Georgie Best. I mean.
Yeah, Georgie Best. Yeah. I was a bit overawed by George Best, actually. I really was. Yeah, the first time I met him. Yeah, because he's like, Jesus, George Best. Yeah. And then everyone's suddenly like 11 years old again, watching Match of the Day. Yeah, it's real. He's there, and he's asking you what you want to drink. It's wild. Yeah. So I thought what would be a nice thing to do is, because we're here, would be to read, and I'd ask you, look, could you
Sure.
read? Now I've got to find the page. I think I found it, but There we are. It fell open. Maybe you could read the piece. Like I say, I asked everybody to write something that would accompany and would kind of speak to the picture. So this is what you wrote.
So will I just read the answer to the 3 questions? Would that be the thing to do?
Just read what you. Yeah, actually read it all. Yeah.
Read the,
Yeah. Oh,
are you
read
going to
it.
get Lisa to do it too, yeah?
And I'm gonna. You're gonna read something
Medicine
from
store for me.
a
Okay.
book I've just read.
Read the poem, maybe.
Will I just read the poem? So,
Yeah.
Okay. Is a poem called July or Uil. I wanted to put in something that was reasonably new. So this was last year, I think. I wrote this. Not to go into any great detail, but it was the time that. Initially there were very malevolent individual actors involved in this, but eventually it was this forces of the state were mobilised to destroy the tents along the banks of the canal in Dublin. And I remember being struck by how quickly the association we had with tents as the minimum, the bare minimum of human shelter and refuge, how that was so quickly transformed into something that appeared to be an affront to people and had to be destroyed, and that it was the state itself that ultimately deployed the police, the guards to destroy those shelters. So I had a few things in my mind. Oscar Wilde's little tent of bluey prisoners called The Sky, but I was also thinking, because there's birds here, and I was doing a lot of work on Padraig Pearse at the time, an extraordinary, open, generous person, and I was thinking of his story Onin and Aeon, where the birds from Africa represent warmth and heat and light, and Ireland is a dark place riddled with illness and the inability to breathe. So here's the poem. Ligort na ficken tu iad a vinne, an éanle on Afric og an saure go herring, dior a graine mar an nob, is tas an vailje prabernach fin a glúv, dúv, bán agus riavach. Na scaunrigiad, is tú dul her bride, ní fada go grappig crag an hírig na pobl bheoga áhis, a bhlahíon I grí gach firis maná, leihann mar seo, nó beghóilet na fillach an dirhacht go brach. Let on you don't see them at all, the birds from Africa that brought summer to Ireland, sundrops dripping from their beaks, and the heat of home fluttering under black, white and piebald feathers. Don't frighten them as you pass by. Too soon the twisted claws of winter will collapse the little tents of joy that bloom in the heart of every woman and man on days like today, when it seems as if the dark might never return.
Thank you. And I've just read your book. It took me a long time to read
It's a very
Harris's.
long book.
Yeah, but I was really moved by it, and I thought it'd be nice if you could read something from that.
Steve had the US hardback, which is the one that you could not possibly lose in a dark room.
J-Glow.
It's kind of, at the time I think it was interestingly the choice was because of online shopping. So they figured yellow is very eye-catching. This is the way it was thought of. All the books were yellow that year in the US. So it was like, the image was
Well, it didn't
important.
get lost.
No. I'm going to read a bit that was requested by Steve. Like a page is all. This is from where one of the characters, there's 5 characters in the book that have voices. One of them, Tony, has been sent to a rehab centre down in West Cork, and his children, of whom he has 6, have come to a family day where they're all going to kind of like discuss techniques that he's going to use once he's out of rehab, and it's going to be very calm and everything, but of course it isn't calm at all. So I'll do a little bit from that. Cian looked mortified, but managed something about homework and bedtimes and proper breakfasts, and Kelly launched into a gleeful speech how she had to do everything around the house, and got a dig into at her older brother for having left her there up to her elbows in the wear and the washing, and Ryan ignored her, and Tony ignored her too, until it came down to it when the counsellor turned in his chair to face the boy. Ryan? He didn't look up. I don't have anything to say. Nothing at all? No. Your father's drinking didn't affect you at all. I can't think of anything. Oh my God, said Kelly. Like, seriously, Ryan? Fucking seriously? And her grandmother said, Kelly, watch your language. Are you for real, boy? Oh, it didn't affect you at all. Is it just the rest of us and we're all making a fuss? You're such an enabler. Well, said the counsellor, that may be an avenue worth exploring when we talk tactics, but right now it's an unhelpful label. But the girl was on a roll. Oh, I bet I'm not supposed to know that word. Like, enabler. Yeah, I couldn't possibly be able to look this shit up on the internet before I get here. Fine, I can spill the beans in his behalf. My dad's drinking has affected my brother in the following ways. He doesn't rat him out, and he doesn't hit him back, and he sure as shit doesn't take responsibility when he drives my dad so crazy he smashes our neighbours' windows. Do you know? And she made a great show of lowering her voice. Why my brother can't live. How my dad's drinking affects me, Ryan said. And he stretched back in his seat, instantly claiming his due space in the room, as if by a magician's trick. I can't remember a time my dad wasn't drinking, so I can't tell you. Oh my God, such bullshit, sang Kelly. So if my dad's always drinking, how am I supposed to tell you how it affects me? How would I know?
Very good.